So thank you, Aros, for coming on to Locally Informed. As an introduction to who our guest speaker is today, it is Aros Mackey. A simple introduction to him. He is the founder and owner of Adaptive Ops. This is an organization that fights child sex trafficking. He is currently pursuing his PhD in criminal justice and homeland security. He's worked at several different levels in the political world. He's worked for the RNC. He's done a lot. He's been on a lot of boards and a lot of chairs. He's been chairman. The dude has had a lot of experience. So we're excited to jump on and get to know a little bit about his background, things that he's doing right now, and inform him on what Locally Informed is and our plan moving forward. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction.
I would love to just start right off with just sharing a little bit about yourself, and kind of get, obviously Ammon's giving you an introduction. You've been involved in politics a long time, and maybe share more of like why you've been in politics. What's been the motivation? Was there a change in your life that changed you from one thing to another? Have you always been like that? Go ahead and share.
Okay. You know, there's a part of my life that I really hadn't shared much, and maybe I'll reveal it now. When I returned from my mission in Canada, my mission president was a business guy, and he really inspired me, and I decided I was going to go in that kind of a direction. And for the first 8 years of my life that way, I was striving to be a businessman. I was going to change the way business was done as the world knew it. I was going to be a jet setter and a business consultant, and I was diving into all kinds of different areas of business. And I went and decided to get some sales training, went to the Kirby company and sold Kirby vacuums, and so I could learn how to do that. And I became a divisional trainer in the first 3 months, and qualified for the trip. Sold 15 Kirbys my first month, and I rose up through the ranks really quick, and then a company called Crestcom, which was an international management training company, they recruited me. They recruit people. They would get the monthly Kirby magazine, and they'd watch people moving up through the ranks and then reach out and recruit them. And so I ended up getting mentored in business by Hal Kraus, who him and Zig Ziglar were college buddies, and they're the ones that started American Sales Masters, and they were selling pots and pans and stuff like that, and making more money than the college president. And then they broke off and created American Sales Masters, and Hal had 2 businesses in the top 100 franchises in the U.S. back then, and he was bootstrapping me into Crestcom, and I started creating my own management training programs for managing time, teams, meetings, interviewing, negotiating, delegating, all that stuff. I used to be so passionate about and loved it. Now it makes me nauseous thinking of that stuff. I was so into it, and I think I've kind of hidden that part of my background a lot, because there's a little bit of embarrassment behind it, where I had there was a family that I was home teaching in our church. We're assigned to different people that to kind of look after and help, and this family came back to church, and he was a successful businessman, had a really nice house and everything, and he felt this calling that he needed to sell everything and join the Navy. And I was like shocked. It's like, you're on this path of success. Why would you give up everything and go into this altruistic style mindset? And he did it because he moved to the spiritual side of things. And I thought, maybe I should start entertaining something like that. And I thought my grandmother loved the International Dance and Music Festival in Rexburg, Idaho, and I thought I'll go and volunteer over there. And they put me over the parade that year. This was 2007, I think, and it was a smashing success. And I didn't know I had skill sets in that kind of an area, and I had made incredible friends on that committee, and then they ended up making me chairperson of the opening ceremonies, which had affected 4,000 people. Then that was the next year, and then I was the co-chairperson. In 2010, I became the co-chairperson, and I just thrived. I didn't know that I had this natural ability to work with committees and things like that, and then I also had went to school. I was against going to schooling and stuff like that, and so and back in 2008, I just ended up at BYU Idaho, and I was studying political science, public relations, and organizational communications, and that, just to kind of give you a little glimpse into my mind, the way I think back when I thought, if I'm going to go to school, then I'm going to do it in a way to where it's in my terms. And so I started going through all the different curriculums that were interesting to me, and started picking out different classes. Like, okay, I want that class, or I want this one. And I ended up discovering that there were 3 different disciplines that use almost all the same classes. And that was organizational communications, political science, and public relations. And so I figured out with 2 extra semesters, I could actually fulfill the requirements of all 3 disciplines. So I went ahead and started doing that. And then when I got to 70 credits, I went to the administration and asked them, what are you going to do? With 2 extra semesters, I'm going to fulfill the requirements for 3 different disciplines. Are you going to give me 3 bachelor degrees? And they said no, and that I would have to retake every one of the classes. And
oh no, yeah. All 70 credits?
It was a money thing. And but to their credit, they created a custom discipline for me, and then gave me 3 clusters, and so that's where my undergrad was with that. And then I just kind of gave up on business pursuits and things like that, and moved to this altruistic style of operating. And I found that success fell in my lap when I was altruistic. And as a business person, I accomplished some cool things, but I had to fight like crazy. I mean, it was so hard for me to be successful in business. And I would see people who I felt like weren't as intelligent or didn't have as much skill as me, that were just naturally, business would fall into their laps and they'd have all this success. And it's like, what the heck was going on? Why is it? Well, when I went to politics and this altruistic style of things, it was opposite. It was me that all this success was falling into my lap, and I didn't have to work that hard to do it. And so I was like, okay, maybe if I just do what God wants me to do, then things just work out. And that's what it is. I gave up on business, and then I started realizing how uncool I was toward people. Everybody I met, when I shook your hand, it was, in my mind, I'm thinking, how can we network to make myself more successful in the future in business? And everything was like that. And now it's, when I meet somebody, I'm thinking, how can I truly become friends with this person? And where if something happens to them, they would trust coming to me and bringing their family to mine, or my family to them. And it's complete relationship type thing for me. So that is that shift that happened that you were asking about. Was there something
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so, you mentioned some committees and different things. I got to be a part of really amazing stuff that, I saw these guys who were fighting tooth and nail to have opportunities that just fell into my lap. And I would just think, maybe you should try business or something else. What is most natural, and then success comes your way.
Yeah.
So I don't know why this area is like that for me, but I do think that there are things that I guess. Do you know the difference between a vocation and a career? Have you ever thought about that? Like a vocation
Me
is
personally, no.
actually utilizing. I think the actual terminology or the actual definition is like more like God-given skill sets and things, versus career is what you develop yourself. And so I feel like my vocation had been led to this point.
And just going off what you're saying, I had a leader who, a spiritual leader, basically say those things where it's like, listen, you'll know when you're on the right track when, like you said, things are working out, and two, you have so much energy, like you just are driven. You're not necessarily burnt out and thrown to the wayside. Like you feel the spirit in the actions that you're doing. So it just kind of, it seems like that's what happened with you as well.
Yeah,
so
and if you are asking God what he wants you to do, and then you get these great ideas and you go do it that way, if you start running into competition or somebody sabotages you, like in politics and things like that, it never offended me when people do that, because one thing you need to know, if you hadn't discovered already, is there's politicking in politics.
Yeah.
But with myself, everything I've been engaged in, it's like it wasn't my first choice to do this kind of a thing. And so if it goes sour or somebody sabotages it on me, I'm not like, my selfish desires aren't destroyed and I'm angry, and I just think, well, if you ruined what God wanted me to do, then you're gonna have to answer to him, and I'll move on to something else that feels right. Because if it stops, then it stopped, and so what? I'm gonna just do what and I've never been happier. The last since 2008 is where I really felt like that shift happened for me. I feel like the quality of life has been untouchable to the world standards for me, and we've had challenges in our families and stuff like that, but I've just been really happy about the relationships and the type of work that I do. And then, you don't know what you'll end up doing. 10 years ago, I was a tubby political scientist. Now I'm traveling the world, taking orphaned slaves out of the arms of slave masters in third world countries, and then as well as confronting traffickers, and and I went from this political science side of things to this criminal justice world where I'm not military or law enforcement, but I'm doing all the fun stuff that they get to do without the bureaucracy. But it's incredibly dangerous as well. And, many times that, I think back and realize I see the Lord's hand at preserving my life, and if it wasn't for that, then I probably wouldn't even be here anymore. And so I would never have chosen this direction. It was just stuff that naturally evolved in that direction because I was listening to, feeling something guiding me, and then listening to that. And that's where I'm at now. So.
Yeah, Aros, I would love to hear more of that story. I think you explained it so well, from you as a kid going from focusing on sales and business to focusing on your vocation, as you say, or your life calling, right? What was the transition from going into politics and then working your way into rescuing children?
I guess let me premise it with one experience I had switching from business to politics. It is be a quick experience. So we were struggling. This was in '08. We had, the economy, the real estate market was starting to crash, and financially we were really hurting. The whole world was basically, and I had this. I was praying about what I should do, and there were 300 dancers from around the world that were coming here, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? I've got this responsibility. It's not going to help me financially, and I have to do this, but yeah, I've got to get to work and provide for my family. We're going to lose our house. We're going to, I can barely even buy milk at this point. And I knelt down and prayed, and I felt like God was telling me that what I'm doing is helping the good of society, because there are a lot of men who are out of work, a lot of families who are struggling, but yet they're going to experience joy from this event that I'm putting on. And that there are these 300 people from around the world who have harder lives than we do, and they're going to experience this. And so that's what he wanted me to do, is focus on that. And so that week, 100%, everything I did was for that, because it felt right. And then miraculously, everything worked out financially for us somehow. I don't even know how to really describe it, but it did. So that is the very important part of I learned so much from that, and now I just have faith and move on. So now, coming to your question, in 2010, I had just finished up being the chairperson for the Celebration of Liberty, and then the co-chairperson for the Idaho International Dance and Music Festival. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I went and prayed, or I went over to the temple actually, and then I had this really strong feeling that we needed to come to St. George, Utah, and help preserve the patriotic and pioneering spirit of Dixie, of this area, which was my wife's grandfather's area. And I just was like, you want me to what? What does that even mean? So we started preparing, and in January 2011, we moved down here, and I did the Dixie Legacy Festival, which was focused on that patriots and pioneers, the kind of a Dixie legacy theme. And then I just started feeling like I needed to be more involved on the protection side of things. And I was just like, there's something resonated with security. Oh, I missed a step. So after I felt like I was supposed to come down here, I was like, why would I do that? Look at all the success I'm creating here. I've got this huge network of people. I've got friends everywhere, and I could really be successful financially if I created a business, or if I did something that, I have abilities and capabilities here to do a lot of good. And I felt like that the answer back was, I didn't have you do this for you. Now I need you to go to St. George. And I'm like, all right, whatever, and then, and so I started putting this together, and I'm like, what is this Dixie stuff? And, the Dixie wasn't really necessarily being attacked like it was here. So it was very intuitive, like for 2011 to be creating this mission to help preserve and protect the patriotic and pioneering spirit of Dixie. It was an inspired thing, I feel like, because it really came under attack, and it still is now. But I created everything around there, and then And then I started getting this pull toward protection and security. And I started thinking the same thing. Why would I move in that kind of a direction? Here I am, this political scientist person, and I finished my bachelor degree, and then I was going into a master's degree in management, and I thought about doing an MPA and staying on the political side of things, and a week before I was setting up my classes, I was going through my classes, doing what I do. Not one single class resonated in my management program. I'm looking at all the classes, like I indicated before, from management and everything. I just couldn't stand the thought of being in class any of those. So I was having a serious internal conflict. And then I was like, okay, what should I do? And I was just praying and going through the curriculum. And I started looking at some classes that were listed in Homeland Security and intelligence, and that were in this school, American Military University, and then it just every one of the classes in this intel program like rang to me like, you need to be in there. And then I was just like, all right, whatever. And I was in Civil Air Patrol. I'm like, they're not even going to accept me in this master's program because I'm not military. But because of I was a second lieutenant in Civil Air Patrol, they accepted me into that program. And I ended up becoming one of the few civilians in this intelligence program for my master's degree. And then that is where it was like, wow, my skill, I thought I had natural skill sets in politics, when it came to the security world and intelligence and things like that, it was magnified tenfold. And the opportunities were falling in my lap. Special trainings, friends in law enforcement and military would be like, hey, my partner's not going to be able to make this training. It's already paid for. Do you want to go to it? And it all felt right. And I took every opportunity for every training that ever came. And then I quickly became a security licensing trainer in the state, concealed carry trainer, and tactical, all forms of tactical trainings, and then became a private investigator. And while studying, I was doing counter human trafficking work. I was introduced to human trafficking in politics in 2009, and then and so I've always studied it and taught people about it. But in 2011, when I was in my master's degree, I was like, okay, this is feeling pretty serious. And then I was actually going to be going to DC to counter terrorism on the political side of things. I was going to help make sure the legislation was either created or cleared out of the way to help the counterterrorism practitioners out there are safer or more efficient in military and law enforcement. And then every time I would study about foreign terrorist organizations and things like that, I would keep coming back to human trafficking, because they were using human trafficking to fund their international illicit operations. And then I realized there's a lot of people countering countering terrorism, and they're really good. They're stopping terror attacks on a weekly basis. Even in Las Vegas, it's on a monthly basis. Our counter-terrorism practitioners are truly amazing. But on human trafficking, it's opposite. There's a ton of human trafficking, ton of traffickers, and very few people countering it. And so I decided to dedicate my life.
Well, yeah. Why do you think? Yeah. Just follow up with that. Why do you think that is? That you're talking about the U.S. government, right? The federal government is very good at stopping terrorist attacks, but isn't focusing any attention on human trafficking.
Yeah. It comes down to a conviction capability. I actually attribute it to the war on drugs that President Bush, I'm ultra conservative and stuff like that, but the war on drugs, from a terrorist perspective and what you can actually declare war on, it doesn't make sense, and it created a lot of gray area that probably hurt us on the criminal justice world, because you can't declare war on an inanimate object. You declare war on the people who would do it. But because they declare war on drugs, now, they were putting huge amounts of money toward the war on drugs in general. And then, and so criminal justice agencies throughout the United States, the prosecutors, DAs, everybody, they started working with law enforcement to be specialized in making drug arrests and getting convictions. And so they were doing sting operations where they would have undercovers take drugs, some kind of narcotic, and sell it. And it's in their hand, transferred into somebody else's hand. Now they can actually make arrests and have convictions because there's an actual product there. And when it comes to human trafficking, they try to use the same sting operations, but it doesn't work, because in order for a crime to be a crime, there has to be the mens rea, so the mental side of it, and the actus reus, so the act of committing the crime. So they have to decide to do it and then do it in order for them to have committed a crime. Well, and there has to be a victim for the crime. When you do a drug exchange, they chose to buy the drug, they took possession of the drug there, and then so there's those two elements there. Human trafficking, first of all, you can't have a real victim that you are selling. Law enforcement can't do that. They can't actually sell a person in a sting operation. So they'll have a fake person that's undercover, so they're not really a victim, they're a pretend victim. And then they'll do the sting operation and sell that person, but it wasn't real. And so they're trying to do it in the way the drug one is. And so a good defense attorney will take that case and be like, well, my client committed no crime because there was no real victim. They didn't take possession of a victim. And so they started writing new laws of intent, like they intended to rape a child or intended to, and they're trying all kinds of different things. But the creativity, the money's not there for the creativity. All the money is there for the creativity in drug convictions.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding you correctly, when Bush declared the war on drugs back in the 2000s, early 2000s, then it pushed these terrorist organizations away from dealing in drugs and into dealing with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Because now there's tons of convictions against drugs. Okay.
They've always done that anyway. Like if they have human trafficking operations, drug trafficking, and actually real businesses that they're bringing in their streams of income. When law enforcement start going after drugs heavy, then they'll move to human trafficking. If they go after human trafficking more heavily, then they're diversified. The terrorist organizations, they're diversified that way. But really, it comes down to the money and the job. If you look at a DA or a prosecutor, who's their bosses? Their bosses are city councils and mayors, and they're typically appointed positions. And then, but a mayor and a city council, if they're interested in seeing drug arrests happen, then they're going to put pressure on the chief of police that, his people need to be making drug arrests and convictions, and so they'll do that. They're answering to their bosses, in the world, or in our U.S. society, they're focused more on drug arrests. You look at the arrest logs or the newspapers, and the arrests that are happening are drug arrests. There's some human trafficking sting operations that happen and stuff, but it's hard for the prosecutors to get that kind of conviction because that's not a cookie cutter type system for them. They're not sure what to do with it.
Is there, what do you have a proposed solution or something that you've seen? Obviously you've been in that is your business in a sense. Your organization is Adaptive Ops. I mean, you've been operating for what, 10 years now, a little bit more than that. What do you do in your organization? Maybe that's either different, or how do you see success with fighting the war on human trafficking?
Okay, let me give you an idea of the challenge. Now, first of all, Adaptive Ops, we are an adaptive operation. So we adapt. The traffickers are adapting constantly. So anytime there's a change in the laws, the traffickers are watching it. They monitor. Everything's public, and so they're like, okay, this just happened, so now we need to do this. The government's behind. They're responding, while the traffickers are they're proactive, and that's the way it is. And so we adapt to traffickers, and then right now each operation, the operation is the name of that person, the missing person, or the case. So that's where Adaptive Ops comes from. But let me tell you something I've never shared, a case I've never shared. So I caught this predator. This guy was like breaking into the churches. He was a homeless guy and a predator. He was actually caught in where the chairs go underneath the stage in a church. He'd been breaking into the churches and hiding in there. There was a couple girls that told me they saw this guy in one of the churches early in the morning, and so I went over there, hurried and cleared it. This guy took off running, and we got the police over there, and the police tried to chase him down. This guy went out into a neighborhood. These families have no idea what kind of night and underground society is happening right here in St. George, Utah. Right, so we go back the next morning, and we figured out how he was getting in, and we secured the building and everything like that. The next morning, we went back again, and I had access to that building, and I went, and it was early in the morning. I go in, and I'm clearing everything. Nothing's going on in there. I see him at the back, at the one of the main entrances, laying down in the doorway. He's tied into the Wi-Fi of the church. He's looking at pornography, and he's masturbating, laying down on right there. So I call 911, and here's the complicated side of it. Once you call 911, you can't record anything with your phone. You can be on a phone call with other people, but if you call 911, your phone won't go into record mode. I should have recorded it first and then called 911, but I called 911 first. And then, and the police came and they arrested him. His defense attorney, once we went to court, his defense attorney was asking me questions like, "Did you see his penis?" And I was like, "Actually, I didn't, but I saw his actions." And then when the police, got there, his pants were still unzipped and everything. And the police officer even said, "Why is your pants unzipped?" Like all this stuff. But because I couldn't say, yes, I saw his penis while he was masturbating at the doorway right there, then he got off. You know, the prosecutors weren't creative. Their creativity is focused in drug charges, not in, you know, having a lot of forethought and training at how to get predators. And whereas the defense, they're like, okay, well, we can actually come in this kind of a direction. They can be a lot more creative, you know, and that's the kind of stuff we have to deal with in criminal justice. And so that was one of the reasons why I ran for city council, so that I could be, you know, one of the bosses that are pushing for our prosecutors to actually be more aggressive and know how to counter that.
Let me ask you this question, then we can transition more into how you got involved in local politics, and you talked a little bit about the motivation for getting in local politics. A big part was the human trafficking side, and you wanting to make sure that was actually addressed, right? As far last question with the adaptive ops for now is it usually just yourself? Is it usually a body of people? How big is this operation for you?
I've trained hundreds of guys, some of the baddest men and women on the planet, but it really is a, you know, it has to be a calling to do this work, because nobody in their right mind is going to go out on Christmas Day or miss anniversaries or birthdays to go do this work. And the hard truth behind it is, this is the devil's playground. And if you are looking for any kind of fame, money, or even war, you will walk into the adversary's trap in this industry, and it'll be bad. And so the sacrifice to do the work is the hardest part. There's no money in it. You're going to be missing so much, and it'll be, people won't know. Most of my recoveries, when I help a family get reunited, people never know, because I can't really talk about it here. It's like, oh, this girl was reunited with her family, but the world is so close on social media here in the US that the family's gonna know. And it's like, it would almost be like a paramedic going online and saying, hey, I just saved this mangled family, you know, where this family, you know, was in a car crash and they're, you know, and somebody died, but we saved these ones. The family don't want to think about it. The paramedics don't want to think about it. And a lot of times paramedics go home and don't even tell their families about what happened. That's the kind of stuff that happens with me. Sometimes I don't even talk about some of the missions at home, and there's been some problems with that. And so we make sure that when I get back from a mission, my wife and I'll go out and on a date night, and then I'll recount what happened, including our secret mission, you know, something that there was a true miracle that happened outside of what we were trying to accomplish. And then she documents it, you know, but most people, they're like wanting a cool experience. And even those that I train, they're like, you know, they want to be a part of a rescue, but they don't want to go do that 24 hours of straight surveillance and sleep in your car and live on protein and water while you're doing that. You know, they just want to go on. And I'm not against setting up a cool experience for somebody. Just that's not my purpose. And if it works out, then great. But it's not going to happen. And it's usually the family that I train up. It'll be a brother or sister or grandpa or a dad that I train them how to be safe out there with me, and they become the operator that helps me. That's on the stateside stuff. Internationally, we have a team of people. We usually will take anywhere from 3 to 7, even 8 people on these international missions freeing slave children.
Mm. And with that, you said that it's really hard. It sounds like it's hard to recruit people because it's a thankless calling. Like you said, all the reasons. So, do you think that, like you said, it's one of your motivations of getting into local politics was, and maybe even one day on a state level or more than that, um, is that the way to really fight things like human trafficking and for yourself to have the greatest impact? Is it doing both things at once? What do you think as far as continuing this mission um, going
Yeah.
forward? What will have the biggest impact?
Human trafficking rescues is incredibly inefficient. The main areas of human trafficking is prevention, rescues, and aftercare. Aftercare is even harder than the rescue side of it. But the prevention is the easiest, most efficient. For I hate to say it, but every dollar donated to rescues is worth probably $3 in prevention. So it's going to go
Interesting.
farther on the prevention side of it.
And
And if you
and the prevention side is what? Is neighborhood watches? What kind of stuff is that?
being so I confront traffickers all the time, and you'd be surprised at who these traffickers are. Sometimes they're the street thugs that are, the hardened person that wants to be in county because that's where the OG gangsters are, and and you're like, they're complete dirtbags and stuff. And so those guys I deal with them, but most of the time they're people who are falling on hard times themselves and can't believe that, and they hate themselves for what they're doing. And so I do find myself kind of ministering to them a little bit as well. And then they're the ones that give me the information I need to find these girls sometimes. Um, you know, the, but the best thing people can do to counter human trafficking, especially since this last summer Sound of Freedom movie came out, it was spun up toward the operators. It's kind of, I felt like it's a little inappropriate to focus on operators that way, because I know those operators, they don't kill people. They don't do solo missions. My organization does do solo missions. That happens. But and then people are left with, now what do we do? Because the story that's told in there isn't something that citizens can actually do, but yet it spun everybody up into this frenzy of awareness, but it was awareness with nothing they could do. So from an operator standpoint, if there was a message that I wished went out with that movie, it would be this: look out, look amongst your family and your friends. If there's a man in your life, in your sphere of influence, maybe a neighbor even, that has recently lost his job, that has just gotten divorced, or something that has destroyed his self-worth or his value, that man is at risk of becoming a predator. And we have this instinct in us to be predators or protectors. And if somebody has low value, when their value is really low, then they tend to move toward being a predator. And so you have to be self-motivated. Protectors are self-motivating, always. And so you need to be looking out for your friends and family. If you know somebody is struggling, build them up. Become your own specialist at knowing how to build value in somebody. Remind them of who they are, that they're a child of the most powerful God in heaven. And when you have that value, they tend to not become customers of human trafficking. And then same with with the predator, with the actual traffickers, I've seen traffickers repent and become good men that fight against human trafficking. And so that is the greatest thing that people can be doing. The next thing would be having our law enforcement, our local politics needs to stay away from anything promiscuous. Promiscuity is a direct link to destroying personal value, and it will destroy your society. It will foster human trafficking and the growth of predators, and that is why I was running for city council, is because I was moving in that direction. I can do policy, I can do anything. I have experience in everything politics, but I'm it's a criminal justice background that my platform was.
Gotcha. So if you like promiscuity, you're saying transgender, the gay parades, like that kind of stuff. Because I know that you were right? You were vocal in not having that out in front of kids, or being that's kind of what you're talking about as far as like the local enforcement or the local city council mayors supporting this and allowing it to happen. Is that kind of what you're talking
about? And with this particular area, it's not that they were necessarily supporting it or allowing it. They weren't bolstering themselves against it. They worship this niceness type. They're like, well, we have to be nice and loving, but they're not putting up their defenses. They're like, well, we can't put defenses because then we're not nice and kind. It's like, no, you're being attacked. And you have to put up your defenses. It's that same concept of, oh, I'm not going to teach my kids values or take them to church. I'm going to let them choose for themselves. Well, while you're doing that, the adversary is targeting them and teaching them while you're not. It is no neutral ground. You're either fostering a strength, and I tell you what, this area, it's truly conservative and strong. I've rescued boys that are caught up in human trafficking in the LGBT community. There's homosexual groups that are trafficking children, and I've gotten boys out of those. And these boys who are vulnerable out there, they're probably more safe in our true strong conservative areas than they are anywhere else in the world. And so fostering this conservative family values and things like that, they're at risk of losing their direction in the LGBTQ movement and becoming conservative and strong, and holding to values. That's the risk that they're not at risk of being attacked. In fact, they're more safe, and it's more dangerous because there are absolutely mark my words right now, I know this, there are predators that will put a rainbow flag out at their house so that the vulnerable will come to them so they can assault them, and it happens. Not all are like that, but predators are absolutely using those inroads. They're using drag shows. And I tell you what, as a private investigator, I ran into the craziest things right here in St. George. People never knew about this underground homosexual community that were, men that you would never ever expect were meeting other men down at the Black Rock exit, as well as over here at the Tonnequin All Abilities Park in the middle of the night, and engaging in promiscuous activity. Some of those guys could be the drag guys. You don't know, but I do know one of them is huge into drag. And I was getting video and stuff of these guys for their wives, so I can't share the information because it was an actual private investigation case. I give the evidence to the wives that are wondering where their husbands are going in the middle of the night. No, it's not okay. We need to shore up our values here, and I mean, we're in a serious decline or a drop in our values because our local city officials are not shoring ourselves up. They're thinking that we're mean if we do.
Addison, this kind of goes back to when me and you were talking and we were trying to figure out, okay, where is our vote most impactful? Or, where do we have the most influence at a state or city level? And this is what we're talking about, how at a city level, that's where you protect the culture. But I like the way that Aros is putting it. It's where you protect those values, right? So, you might be able to go into city council and change laws that are legislated at a state and national level, but that's where you hedge up and fight against, whatever adversary pushing against those values or that culture in that area. So,
and it sounds like as well that you have a lot of impact over okay, so if I'm understanding this, because I don't know if we explained this at the beginning, we're trying to be students right now. We're trying to learn the game of city, county, state politics, and so that we can keep people locally informed, right? But we're just at the beginning of our journey. So my understanding is that each city is over the police, the fire, the roads, things like that. Well, the police, so they're over the city law enforcement, right? And
Yes,
so, am I getting that right? They're over city law enforcement.
Yeah, the city council and mayor. Yeah, there's
Okay.
all this standard politics and running business, but they're the bosses of our criminal justice department.
So then, if there's a law enforcement problem, if there are more shootings, if there's more kidnappings, sex trafficking, whatever the law enforcement problem is within a city's jurisdiction, then it really comes down to the city council and the mayor. Is that what you're saying?
100%. From my own
Interesting. I didn't,
because I work with other cities. There's another city that the mayor is a good friend of mine, and they come to our trainings. They've welcomed us into their community. It's in Orange Beach, Alabama. The police chief even dedicated an office in the police department so we can help with investigations in there. And they're like really aggressive, and they have very good operations in stopping human trafficking there because they actually care. They care less. Their focus isn't on the drug convictions; it's on the human trafficking side of things too. So yeah, definitely huge impact on what's happening. And getting political.
Well, that's a big breakthrough. I had no idea about that.
It doesn't help that our current chief of police in St. George went and knelt with Black Lives Matter. Like when they were protesting here, he actually went and took a knee with them in the protest. But he's not showing that kind of bias toward other groups more on a conservative side. So the morale is going to be different for the police, let alone the mayor was out there as well. Those kind of things are, first of all, they shouldn't be participating in that. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have biases. Everybody's got biases, but they shouldn't be activists at that kind of a level. That is going to be very harmful. I believe it's been really harmful on our law enforcement being able to get a handle on some of the issues.
So I'm curious of how you were received during this city council runoff, especially with the angle that you're approaching from. I haven't heard a lot of people approaching local politics or politics in general in that angle. Yeah. So how is that for your experience here in St. George?
Well, interestingly enough, I'm not well known here at home, and that was by design. I have more of an international following. I've got 50,000 followers, and I've got a video. It's got more than more than 1 million views, and I've got a lot of activity. But they know me as Aros Artemis, and they don't know that I live in Utah, let alone St. George, Utah. So at home, people just don't know that about me, like in general, people in general. And so I had to put my last name on the ballot, or because my last name's on the ballot, Aros Mackey, then I had to change all my social media for that time, and so I didn't have much presence. And so with not having name recognition in the area, I still got over 4,000 votes. And in most elections here, 3,500 to 4,000 votes will get you elected. But it was a big election, and there was a lot of us. But so it resonated very strongly, and I missed it by about 700 votes. I probably could have gotten those other 700 votes if I wasn't saying things like, if you like drag shows, don't vote for me.
I had no idea that they were so close. Like 700 votes, in my opinion, is not a lot. I didn't know that it was,
it's really not. It's viable. And so it's still, because it was a viable run, it's still on the table for me to do it again. Most people don't win in their first elections anyway, their first run anyway. But I actually really enjoyed it. I didn't think that I was going to like it that much, but I loved every bit of it. And maybe it's the reliving my political science days and stuff like that. I just had a lot of fun. So the people, they definitely, to answer your question, I think it really resonated with people because they're feeling it. I was saying what most people are thinking. Unfortunately, most people that heard my voice don't go out and vote. Those that are like, yeah, you're right, and then they don't vote. I had so many friends in the area. They're like, the week after, they're like, hey, when do we go vote? It's like, it's too late.
They need to be locally informed.
We need locally informed. Yeah, so they could know. They get a text message, get in there, vote right now. If that kind of stuff was happening to the general public, then I probably would have won that first run, first time running. But yeah, most people just don't go. And then those that are standard voters, they get their opinions. They vote toward their own prosperity. They're literally thinking, okay, this family and these families have an impact on my business, so I'm voting for them regardless of what they're saying. I hate it. I hate what they're doing, what they're saying. But for my prosperity, I need them to stay there for my future plans. They're making deals like that. And there's so few voters for the 100,000 population here that is the influence. Somebody's business that has they can spend money, and we saw money, large amounts of money come in. I had one of the lowest. I mean, I think it was $1.33 per vote. What I ended up doing. Most of the candidates, especially those that won, they were spending $7 and $8 per vote. Oh, sorry.
Wow.
So
the person who won, just curious. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
What was that?
Oh, I'm just curious. Quickly, what was the people that won? What were their votes? Like, how many did they get?
So in the primary, so the primary election, it was like 6,000 and 7,000 votes were the ones that made it through. The general election were in that 10 and 11,000 that made it through.
And the reason why I bring that up, you look at St. George, and what is there, 80,000 people?
100
or 100?
How many voters? I think there's actually around 60,000 registered voters or something like that for St. George.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look, how many people are there? How many people are actual registered voters? And then how many people show up and actually vote?
Yeah.
That's just a huge insight to see how much strength we have to be able to push back. Because not a lot of people are involved. I mean, and I'm saying this on I myself am not that involved even before this. I'm just starting to kind of get more involved. I've always loved politics, but I've just had kind of a shift of the importance of local politics, which I don't think a lot of people feel or know.
Yeah, but it's directly affecting their lives. And in fact, I've been out in my shop, kind of organizing my tools and stuff, and then I went and got the garbages back, and we have the blue recycling. You know what? It really ticks me off that they did not ask me to participate in the recycling side of it. I'm forced to. Everybody is forced to pay for recycling. What if I wanted to recycle on my own and take it over? No, you have no choice. They decided, and now you are paying for it. And I already know most of their recycling is bullcrap. They throw it all away because it's compromised. But yet, so that means they're wasting public resources. We're paying them to recycle it. That's political corruption. Like, those are the kinds of things that it's like, man, they're engaging in political corruption, and they forced me to participate in it. That's bullcrap. I was actually thinking that this morning, looking at the blue can, like, this is simple.
Yeah, what other things would you say have, like, local politics, city councils, mayors have an impact on individual average citizens? You talked about law enforcement, blue cans. What are some of those other things?
The next greatest threat would be, oh my gosh. Okay, so my master's degree is in intelligence, right? So I predicted coups. That was part of what I did, was watched and monitored those kind of things and saw attacks. I knew from the beginning, talking to my friends in the intel community and stuff like that, that COVID was a bioweapon, and in the shot is also a bioweapon. Like, they're both strategically used for political gain, and to, people are making money, and it's all targeted. And it might sound conspiracy. I don't care. I mean, it's real, and evidence is starting to come out more and more now, like that. Like, yes, COVID was real, but it was manufactured. So one of the things that people don't realize is having a city council and mayor that have a backbone to stand up for the citizens is extremely important. There are some communities that they took a stand against a government intrusion and protected their citizens. Most places don't. And so that's really where people need to be thinking about who their representatives are. Is this person going to have a backbone and stand up for their rights? Or are they going to cave and give up the rights of the citizens forever based on safety and security? That's probably, in my mind, one of the biggest reasons people need to be involved in politics, because they need to be able to have representatives that are going to stand up for them and push back against the feds or corrupt movements that are trying to take their rights away. Because once rights are taken away, they're rarely given back without blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you have all your standard issues too, like like here in St. George, they have the hillside ordinance. They decided that some of the hills, the views look terrible because people were building on a mountainside. In order to do it, they had to cut into the mountain, and so the backdrop changed from a natural look to looks like a dug in mountainside and it's not as appealing. So they started creating hillside ordinances, and they took sections and kind of drew a line. Okay, people along this side can't build, on this side of the line. And there were people with flat properties that had a line drawn straight across the center of it. And in 2011, I was at a city council meeting just observing, and there was a man in there begging the city council to let him build a shed on his property, but they drew a line across his thing. And every one of the city council members at the time, they're like, well, if we let him build on that, then other people, not one single person was like, you know what? This is a man that has personal privacy rights, his private property rights. And not one of them stood up for him. They were like, well, with our political game, it's like, no, man, if we don't have people that represent the people in there, and then, we lose rights, and we get this dictatorship mentality that, nothing's worse than political leaders that are entitled. The people are bad.
Yeah. What would you say? What percentage of citizens are informed about what their local city councils and mayors are doing?
That's a tough question. If I were to have to guess, not even 10%. And then even what you do need to know, and what I wish the people knew, is part of that is strategic. The city council and the local governments, they don't want people to know. And so, when they have to notify people, there's opposite marketing strategies used. They are not going to put it in colors where people are going to notice, put it in places where they're going to be like, oh, or it's not going to be in font that's easy to read. It's going to be blocked letters that are, it's going to be really hard to read, and it's going to be written in a way to where you're just not going to pull out that information. They're not going to create bullet points for you if they
Yeah.
I recently got one of those documents from my bank, and it had the 3 columns on one page, and it was like a normal size paper, but 3 columns. I'm like, how on earth? And I just skipped the 30 pages that it had. I was like, well, I'm not gonna hire an attorney to go and read through these 30 pages.
That's right. And when they have to let you know, they're going to use opposite marketing principles. They stir apathy. They stir the apathy. They want you to relax. Leave the political system up to the professionals. It's okay. You elected us. Now just trust us. That's what's happening out there.
Well, we have a friend who works in the state side of things, the state level. And I was like, hey, man, can you educate us? Can you do like a crash course of even city council, right? Because we're trying to look for it online and we can't find anything. And so he's like, it's strategic, right? They want to keep people in ignorance because ignorant people are easy to control. So, it goes exactly what you're saying here. I have a question for you. Why do you think that your friends who probably share the same values, why do you think your friends weren't involved
in
voting for their politics?
Probably because my friends are people who are busy. They work. They're managers, or they're running businesses. They're raising families. They're concerned about their kids, and they're being dads and they're being moms, and they're volunteering. In different capacities, and then when they go home after a busy day, they don't want to even think politics. They just want to, and I get it. I feel the same way. But our livelihoods are being
Yeah.
severely affected by these predator political movements.
Well, maybe we make the transition into locally informed because it addresses, really why it came about was for those specific reasons. Okay. So I was at a dinner with my in-laws and he brought up something that was going on in the local level. And mind you, my whole life I've been political. I love politics, but that's on national level. I've been, attentive, right? So we're sitting down, he's telling me about this, and I'm just like, that is crazy here in our conservative small town that is even on the discussion table, right? So I was like, if people knew, I think that they wouldn't be for this, right? So why do people not know? And essentially what I got down to is probably what you were saying is people are busy, right? They have their jobs, they're volunteering, whether it's church or other organizations. And I was like, in this day and age, why isn't there something just so simple that gives me just a text message of what is going on, who the people are? I mean, that's the first thing is I didn't even know who our local leaders were. I didn't know if they have a bad backbone. I don't know what their voting history is, what they're supporting.
And people just trust the last name.
And because
people will just trust the last name and be like, oh, they got to be good if they have that name. That's the problem. That's a big problem.
Well, I feel like not even that. Like you said, there are the few political activists that know, and the few like prominent people in the community that do know these people. But those people are very, very few. I feel like the vast majority of people as I've gotten involved with locally informed, I just asked all of my friends, all my family. I'm like, here's a question. What's the name of your town's mayor? And not one person has been able to give the name. I'm like, what about the city council?
One that used to be there.
Yeah, they can say, oh, I think I remember the mayor of New York City, but do you know the name of your? They don't even know the names. If you don't even know the name, how are you supposed to know what they believe in? And then on top of that, how are you supposed to know what they're voting on?
Yeah. The city of Washington City here, right next door, they've got a pretty good system online where they give a breakdown of what they're going to be covering on the agenda, and then they also I believe indicate how each member of the city council voted on those policies in the last one.
That's awesome. Cool. But it just gets down to the point of who's looking at it, like who's going to take the time of day to get quickly updated, right? So that's
because let me say this, Hammond, because I think one, they think, like you said, Aros, why does that even matter? It doesn't matter what the city council is doing. Doesn't matter what I don't even think people realize that there's a county government as well. And then it's really just what's the president of the United States is doing, maybe. Whereas I feel like the majority of people are 100% divorced from politics, and they just say, I don't want to get involved in it. It's too dirty. I would rather focus on my family, my business, my charities, whatever. But I think they don't realize that politics is changing their lives as they know it, and things are changing around them, but they don't know where it's coming from, and they might blame one person or another person, but they don't realize that it's their city, their county, their state that are the most responsible.
Yeah, it's so true.
Now, I will say this, though. Like, I do feel like, in general, people are starting to wake up and be a little bit more tuned in on caring, at least. I've seen that with my own family. I mean, my family in our extended family were the political ones. But now when we have dinners and we sit down, our entire family is talking politics or things like that, even some of my friends. So I feel like right now is a perfect time to answer that question where people might start to get attentive and they might care a little bit more, but it's like, okay, then what now? Just like what you were saying, Aros, with child sex trafficking, you had that movie that came out, people watch it. Okay, cool. But what do I do, to actually have an impact in that? So that's where we come in and we're like, okay, let's just, create a simple process to give people the ability to now know, okay, what do I do? How can I actually make an impact now that my interest is spiked? So.
Yeah, you guys are on to something, I think. And, if you can bring it to fulfillment and, and have something that has some strategic way to keep it efficient and easily manageable, where it's not a huge burden on somebody to be a part of or to keep running, then I really think you could have a serious impact with it. Locally informed.
For sure. And I think that kind of the easiest way to explain it is breaking down. Am and I went over what our mission was, like what do we really want to achieve, and it's essentially to restore that balance of power back to the people, right? It swung too far over in the elected officials and even the bureaucrat side of they're the ones that are making all the decisions when really it should be the people. So it's basically restoring that balance of power. How? Through a simple text message that you get on a weekly basis that one informs you of who your local leaders are, what they're voting on, what are the important issues, right? Because there are like dozens and hundreds of different small things that we can focus on, but we want to focus on the things that are the most crucial. I think it was awesome having you on, learning about human trafficking and putting that back into the picture. It's people like you that are going to help us determine where to put the focus on these city and county levels and the state level. So it's one, informing people what's actually going on, who their leaders are, and even when to vote, right? I don't even know when to vote. And then two, allowing them through the text message to say, I agree with this, I disagree with this. And it's as simple as you don't need to go and research these 10 pages of what's going on. You definitely can if you want to, but most people have busy lives. They're going on. They have families, businesses to run, but I have time to read a text message. Oh my gosh, I didn't know the city was doing this. Why did they? No, I disagree with that. And now pretty soon we can go to the city and say, we just ran a poll of our 10,000 locally informed members in St. George, and 8,000 of them disagree with what you guys are doing. And they know your names. And if you guys continue with this, they'll vote you out.
And we're notifying them that we notified you right now.
Yeah. I like that. That's that whole, accountability.
One good angle to do this is amongst the delegates here in the state. So next March will be the next convention for the caucus, and the precinct leaders need to know about your program. I'm a precinct. I'm the vice chair of my precinct, and
So could you explain? Yeah, could you explain what does that mean? The delegates from the state.
So
what delegates?
In the state of Utah, the Democrats and the Republicans have legislative precincts, and you have your state legislatures that have their precincts, and then you have the political precincts, which are broken down even smaller, and then every election cycle, and so every 2 years, then we have a caucus, and in the caucus meeting, then the people in those communities come together in one spot for the precinct. I'm precinct 41 or precinct 42. And so everybody that lives in precinct 42 will go to a certain place and meet in person and vote there for who their precinct leaders are. And then the precinct leaders, it becomes state delegates or county delegates, and or both. And then they go to the county convention and the state convention and vote in those conventions. But this caucus system,
what are you guys voting on?
it just depends. Like the convention, a lot of times if there's somebody who leaves their political office, then the delegates will have an emergency vote, and they'll go to a convention and vote for who the replacement will be and stuff like that. Those kind of things are happening, or bylaw changes and things like that, all kinds of stuff. But the precinct leaders that I got in front of during my campaign, I won those precincts because they go around, they go to their neighborhoods and talk to their voting base in their precinct. The precinct leadership does, and we do that in ours. And so those are the ones. It'd be so nice if we had locally informed set up. So every time I talk to people in my precinct, I get their phone number and tell them, hey, I'm going to send you a link, register with this like right now, so that when I have updates, I can let you know, because we need you. We need you to know.
Yeah.
And that will be the hugest impact. That's how the state will be taken back by the people, is through the delegates here in Utah, or through the precinct leadership.
Yeah. So I feel like I don't know a lot about this, but I feel like this is important. So I want to try to understand it. And Addison, if you understand it, explain it to me a little bit. But when you say you feel like this is the way to win back the state is through those leaders, how do you see that exactly with locally informed? How would you utilize locally informed in your own explanation?
What I would want
I
would want my own access as a political leader or a precinct leader into locally informed, where I log in and I type in this particular vote is happening. Boom, I send it out and it goes directly to my precinct. Something like that. And then you can do all the standard stuff too.
To your precinct, that essentially is to the local citizens in that area, right? Okay.
Like a small area of St. George, or a part of St. George is your precinct, right?
So, that's going to be broken. That's going to be, probably a little more dynamic in setting up and creating.
Yeah.
But it could probably be done if you have a system that's broken down for city level. It can probably be broken down to precinct areas as well. And then the local Republican Party is going to definitely want access to the, being able to, what you're going to be influencing will be huge that way. But going to the precincts, it would be the local Republican and Democrat county chairs that will really be doing it. But at the same time, we don't have to have them. Us precinct leaders we communicate. We can make sure the other precinct leaders are utilizing the same thing. But that that's on like a 6 or 7 block radius is the precincts.
Yeah.
So how you guys set it up will be up to you, but that's an idea.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting, Addison, if maybe even we had, the lists of who are the precinct or the delegate leaders, and even if we communicated,
it's the precinct chair and vice chair is who you want.
Vice chair. Yeah. Even if we wanted to start there, where we communicate, like there is an element of the service that communicates directly to local leaders, including
And
precinct chair,
I'll
vice
send you a
chair.
link because we
So
have like the voting numbers that came through each precinct. So I'll send you a link to that so you can see what the numbers
awesome.
are like. And those people that voted in those precincts are influenced by the precinct leader.
Interesting. Yeah, I think right now we're just going to get going and go on a very base level. But I love the saying, if there's a will, there's a way. In Think and Grow Rich, where it's like, as long as you, whatever you can think of, you can accomplish, you can figure out a solution. So I think, Addison's really good at this, is just moving forward. And then things tend to
once you guys
start
get it
to
up and
align,
running,
and you
if we
start to
wanted to
figure it out.
experiment in my precinct, we could start here and actually prove it on a small scale like that. And then I've got other precinct leaders that work.
Because what we plan on doing right now, like step number 1, we're just going to get people signed up and start informing them very simple information. And when we say simple, it's going to be the vital information.
Based on state,
and so
county, or
when we
city,
get to
or
like
something, or?
Yeah. So it's going to be, when we look at what we're going to actually jump on a call after this to understand the state legislative, process and things like that. But what we've been tipped on to look more into is, that's really who's writing the bills in your state, that it's going to be affecting, protecting your rights when it comes to, what the Constitution stands for. So, especially state representatives in your area, not like the U.S. Senator and the U.S. House of Representatives, but
representatives.
State. And so we're going to, at least right now, figure out a little bit more about that. But when it comes to preserving our rights, that's where we're geared towards, is those state representatives. And then the second attribute is, we are going to focus on a city level and preserving those values and those the culture of the area. So those are the two areas that we're going to focus on when we start. And then the process and the actual operations and the cool attributes like you're talking about is what we plan to
you're going to
figure out and
inside state and even maybe city representatives inside your organization that are overseeing the information, right?
Yes. And what we're thinking, and this is where we'd love your feedback as well. When it comes to like state legislative bills, we feel like if we have, an inside there where we can communicate to like our team lead in Utah, for an example, that would be their job, is to get the information and then be able to relay it. But also on the city level, he's responsible for making, these relationships with like Michelle Tanner, right? She's a freedom fighter in St. George, where she can communicate a lot of the information. And then we're just here. We have one person over like all of Washington County or all of Utah. We'll figure out how many numbers we need, but their responsibility is the relationship and gathering the information.
Do you guys have access to Michelle? Yeah. So I can connect you if you want. She would probably, this would probably
really love
resonate
that
with her. So.
Yeah, no, we would love to even set up something like this where we can explain what we're doing, learn a little bit about her. And she's currently on the council, right now. It would be awesome to see how her experience is, because this is the first time that she's been there.
This is her first
2021.
So her election is in 2 years. So they're 4-year terms.
Yeah.
I'll connect you. I'll connect you via text. Yeah. He will want to know this is happening. And then.
And let me just say this real quick. I know you're a busy man, and we should probably wrap it up here soon. But the plan to actually get this off the feet, I mean, it's a good idea. But then it's questions like, okay, how do you get people to actually sign up, right? So we're basically pulling from some of our experiences, both me and Addison, on how to actually accomplish this. And this is what I'm excited about. I've had a little bit of experience in the event industry. It seems like not as much as you. I didn't know that you were in the event industry so much, which is pretty cool. We'll have to talk about that later. But essentially, what our plan is creating a ground team of 25 to 50 people, where every single Saturday we'll go in on these blitzes just to get people, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the organization. We don't need your social security and your full address. We just need your number and the city that you're in. And then you can have quick, up-to-date information about who and what is going on in your local area. And so we plan that from January 1st to March 1st, every Saturday. And I really think, when we do it right, we can get close to 10,000 people. I really do.
That'll be a big deal because the caucus is in March. And so you definitely want to do that.
March what? Or if you don't know, I'll find out. But
ready for
the idea, it might be perfect timing, Addison, because I was like, I don't know why, but I just chose these dates. In March, we want to do a freedom event, a fundraising event for Locally Informed. Like we want to bring, let's say, Glenn Beck, grab a state representative, and then a local freedom fighter to be able to, put on this event. We've had experience here. I think that we can get a few thousand people out for that. It's going to be a free event. The whole idea behind it is to rally the cause with local involvement, the importance of local government. And at that moment, we'll be like, okay, now, our goal was to get 10,000 subscribers here in this area. Imagine what we're going to have in 1 year, 5 years, and the influence that we'll have on just the overall populace now knowing and being able to participate in a very convenient way. And so that's our plan for the next few months on getting this going. So, we appreciate the connections that you will help us with Michelle. And if there's anyone else, we would love that.